Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the 30 Plus Click podcast. I am your host, Max, and with me today still is.
Yeah.
And we're so excited to have you in our kitchen, our living room, as we have another wonderful conversation. And this one is very important to me because it bordered on something I experienced a few months ago. Many of you may not know that a few months ago I turned 30. Now, in the lead up to my 30th birthday, a lot of people kept on asking me, how was I feeling? How did I feel? And initially, I did not understand that question because before I turned 30, I had celebrated my birthday at least 29 times in the past. And not once had people asked me how was I feeling. Instead, people always asked me if I was excited. So I wondered what was different about this birthday. And then it dawned on me that the difference was I was turning 30. At 30, you're expected to get your shit together. At 30, you're expected to know where you're going next in life. And so it's almost like I was getting on this new wavelength or something. Even though it's something that I wasn't thinking, but people, you tend to ask yourself as you approach your 30s, you're like, have I lived my 20s well? Like, has my 20s been something that is worthy of note? Did I achieve my goals, the goals that I set when I turned 21 or 20 or 19, if you were that deep? You know, has everything panned out the way life was supposed to go? Am I living okay? Am I comfortable? Am I working in my purpose? I guess those were the questions that people were expecting me to be asking myself. I'm not that deep. So these were not the things that were on my mind at the time. I was just excited to be turning 30. But as I look back now on the situation, I realize that these are real questions that people are worried about every day and every moment of their lives. Now, you might not know that Yo-Yo is significantly well older than me. She's well into her 30 plus, to be fair. And so we wanted to have this conversation because, as someone who is standing on the other side of being 30, as someone who's experienced what their 30s has to hold, if you could go back in time to talk to that girl who was turning 30 on the eve of your birthday, who probably, before I say anything next, how did you feel when you were turning 30?
Well, it was a significant year. And because I have a birthday routine, most of the time, I tend not to ponder on what I have achieved. I tend to look at, okay, where am I now? Where do I want to go to? But looking at my younger self, like when I was in 2021 in university, I had so many dreams when I was 30. So one of it would be that okay, at 30, I should be done with having my kids. I should have a this, I should have my home, I should be married, I should be this. Sometimes the society have a way of putting a subtle pressure on you. It comes sometimes with some form of comparison from your home, from the church, from your colleagues, from your neighborhood where you live in. And so technically, you just live carrying this burden of pressure. And so there is this generalized expectation at 30. And then I was lucky enough not to get caught up with the noise from the community. I have a very strong mind. I have a mind of my own. I don't know how I built that, but I have a mind of my own. I don't allow things bother me. I try to work on my pace. I try to follow my goals. I try to do all those because I grew up with so many competition around. I grew up with so many expectation from the community, with so many expectation from church members. You have these volunteer mothers, volunteer fathers, virtual uncles, virtual aunties that want to tell you what you should have done at this age. And so with that, I found a way to break off them when I was around 26, 28. And so that helped to reduce the foreseen pressure at 30. So at 30, I was nursing my first child. And so I was a little bit busy. And based on my career at 30, well, there's no time to to think too much because your sales target will bother you. And so I had so many things that I needed to put my energy on. And because I've already made that work at 20 something to break away from that subtle pressure. So that helped me kind of at 30.
I love what you just said right there about, one thing, the two things I got from that was one, societal pressure, and two was, mental strength or mental fortitude. If you might not be aware, and this is to the audience if you're listening to me today, we do have an African background. And in our African society, once a woman turns 23, 24, 23, 24 is the ideal age to be married. By 25, you should be expected to have at least your first kid. By 27, 28, you should be wrapping things up in the child department. By 30, you should be well into your mothering phase. Like you have had your kids, you're now, running after school. That is kind of the way life is expected to go for you. Now imagine me, I'm approaching my 30s. I am approaching it as a single woman. I did not have a husband. I did not have kids. I did not have a mothering phase to look forward to. To some people, in the eyes of society, that would be a failure. And I understand now, as I look back on that question, how are you feeling? That those were some of the questions that people were expecting me to answer. How was I feeling turning 30 as a single woman? And if I'm being honest with you, well, it was my birthday. What else would I do, right?
Yeah, kind of. And so that question came with a subtle expectation. They're not they don't want to put it out there like the list of questions they would ask you. And so the better way to summarize it is how you're feeling. And so thank God that you did not get it then.
There's something to be said for people who aren't that deep. No,
So
but
yeah, if you had understood that question, you would just start running tab, right? Talking about everything, but it was good that you did not understand that. And so, yeah, that that's the brain behind that question, Max.
no, but also it makes me understand like a lot of people, right? This kind of pressures that people are feeling as they're approaching a certain level. Now, for me, I'm a career person. I've always been a career person, right? So for everything that I've ever achieved in my career, it just didn't seem to measure up until I would able to present my trophy husband and my kid, which were lacking. And for my aunties or for societies, that that was not good enough. So as a young lady, and I'm glad that you mentioned that you had the mental strength, that you had your mental fortitude, that you already learned how to silence the crowd, that put you in a place where you were already safeguarded in yourself. If you could talk us a little bit about how you got to that space where you were able to tune out the noise, because like you say, like I was hearing this noise last year, but it was not easy, but I was also not very deep. So I didn't really get it until when I began to like peel back on that question a little bit later. So like tell me now, like as an advice to me or as advice to people in my position, how do you tune out the noise? How do you get to a place of mental strength where the noise of other people or the expectations of outsiders are not so burdensome on you?
Okay, so I'm going to answer your question in multiple phases. So first of all, I grew up in a family of 7. And so I grew up with people, my family, my siblings. And so the expectation, why are you doing this? Why are you not doing this? Then you step out of the house. I lived in a community, a very mini estate, and over 10 neighbors, why are you doing this? Why? Then you finally get to church. There's this multitude also telling you and asking you. And so I just lived my life that way. And when I got to school, I realized that there was this young community that wanted to start that trend. And so the reason why I started paying attention to that was because I see that we are in the same age group. So why should I be accountable to them? What moral right do they have to be questioning me when they are not perceived to be elderly people. And so with that, I started resisting those questions. So when they ask me that, I ignore it. And so
Oh,
that was how I started building those skill of how to just resist those questions when I know that I am not accountable to you, I don't answer to you, you are not my father, you're not my mother. What value would you have to me? And because I happen to be the last child in my family, I had elder ones that were grown. And so when they speak to me, they speak from that level. And so I had to work in my brain to catch up with their wisdom. And so that helped me a lot to just push out and snap out very well, very easily. And so back from school, I already had this, I already had this appearance of a mini snob. So when you see my face, you cannot even come and ask me, are you married yet? The face will never entertain that question. And so I learned that push off at school because it wanted to repeat itself. I did that when as a youth, but I didn't want to do that in school. And so that helped me. And by the time I finished school and I started working, going to church, yeah, so I was a mini adult and I was able to grow very fast in my career. I was a mini adult. Yeah, a little bit of respect and regards. Yeah, that was good also. And with my face, never. You can't even come and be asking me those shit. So
So one of the things that I actually hear, and I'm so sorry to interject right there, but like one of the things that I'm hearing you say, and I want to make sure that our viewers are actually getting that very correctly, is that you have to be able to set a healthy line of boundaries. You know, that there has to be healthy boundaries. So boundaries with your families, boundaries with your friends, boundaries with your community members. That not everybody has the right to walk into your space and violate your space and ask you questions that are quite borderline, if I'm being honest. So you have to be able to set those boundaries. And when you set that first boundary, it gives you the courage to set another boundary. And just very, of course, it's going to be uncomfortable to the person who's on the other side of the boundary you're setting. But like as you continue to set those boundaries, you find out that people will adjust. People will adjust in the way they interact with you and in the way that they, the things that come out of their mouth. So one of the things that I'm hearing her say to us right now is learn how to set boundaries, learn how to set boundaries. And those boundaries are the things that are going to guide you as you continue to, gravitate through life. Is that am I correct?
yes, the boundaries is very helpful, but you must also be able to recognize valuable conversation, people that had value to your life. So if you've been questioned by people that you know will not add value to that particular area of your life, that's an easy way out. If you're being interrogated or if you're being perceived or this subtle expectation from a group of people that will never add value to you, then it's just an easy way to just turn off. So what is value for you? That's where we started from.
Oh, interesting. I never thought about it that way. What is value to you? That's a very good question. And that's something that I think this is something that I would like our viewers or audiences to, talk to us in the chat about, write down in the comment section as you listen to this, take a time, pause, think, what is value to you? Answer that question. I would love to read it, and I would love to hear what value is to you. But thanks, Yo, for giving us that bit of an insight. So if I'm going to pivot a little bit, as you are now well into your 30 plus, heading towards your 40 plus now, um, if you could look back on the girl who was turning 30, however many years ago that was, everything you've achieved in that little span of time, including in your marriage, in your work, in your everything, just generally, what are some of the advices that you would give to her regarding, you know, as she was turning 30s, maybe some of the little worries? I know you already said you had like a mental strength, but like if whatever worries that were on her mind when she was turning 30, if you could give her an advice right now, what would that be?
So one, I would go in the positive and also go in the gray areas. In the positive, still owe God strongly, still build faith, still rely on God, still have a communication with God. People would like to call it prayer, That's good if that works for you. But I like to call it daily conversation with Jesus. Talk to him about everything. He has a way of directing you. He has a way of bringing everything to pass. And secondly, I would also commend myself for connecting with a generation ahead of me. I started that quite early, as early as 16. My friends then would be people that are in university, people that are master's degree holder, people doing MBA. So I was exposed quite early to a banquet of wisdom. And so I could hear wisdom, I could see wisdom, I could interpret wisdom. That was good for me. So your network is very important. Don't surround yourself with people that are not in the same direction. And if you find yourself in the same direction with a group of girls or boys, try to switch. Go for people that are already ahead of you. And that was one of the advantage I had. I was only connecting with people that are already ahead of me. I was not under pressure. I see them, I want to learn from them, I want to grow to them. And so that helped me. Then the other areas that I think I would work more, I would build stronger bonds with my family members. I would love them more. I would listen to them more. I would not argue with them. I would spend more time with them. And so, because at the end of the day, family still remains everything. And you cannot just walk your way back to family if you did not invest in building valuable relationship with your family members. Yeah.
So that was quite deep. That was deep. So I'm going to be bringing this to a close very soon. But if you don't learn anything and if you didn't take anything away from this podcast today, just a number of things, build your network. If you are someone who is a person of faith, if you have any kind of faith, well, hold on to God, whichever God you serve. You know, if you're not a person of faith, well, hold on to whatever inspires you in a good way, please. um, and build your network and expand your horizon in a way that you want to be able to call on people who are ahead of you, people who are ahead of you. So when you need that bit of help, and of course at the end of the day, just to reiterate what she just said, loving your family because you only got one, right? So thank you so much, Yo-Yo, for sharing us what it was like for you. I know that there are a lot of people who are, on the precipice and of what's next in their life. You're standing here on the precipice of where next, what next, and what would happen. I just want you to know that it's going to be okay. If you're 29, turning 30, I promise you it's not that scary. If you're in your 20s and you're trying to do everything that you can to ensure that you create a certain life for yourself before your 30s, make sure that you're doing that because you're doing that for yourself, because this is something you want to do, not because you're under any kind of societal pressure. If you find that whatever you're doing is out of any kind of societal pressure, please learn to give yourself grace. I promise you, if you take a step back and look from a different vantage point, you will see that you're really doing okay. But yeah, that's all we have for today. And for all the people already in their 30 plus, baby, we know it's not easy, but keep on going. You're doing just fine. If you have enjoyed this episode and if you have learned anything, please tell us in the comment section what you learned. We would love to hear from you. And of course, feel free to share this within your network as wide as possible. And yeah, this is it. This has been 30 Plus Click. I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.